Good morning. Hey, Joel Brewer here with Be Growth Driven. I'm excited for today's episode because it brings on a good friend of mine, Brian Galke. We're going to talk about communication. When's the last time you maybe met somebody, talked to somebody, and you realize, oh my goodness, I said the wrong thing. I certainly didn't read the room right, didn't read the person right. It's happened to every single one of us. I met Brian actually a couple years ago, right after GrowthCon 3 in Miami. And we had the chance to connect then, and we've been able to stay connected throughout the years there since. Not only a great guy, but just what he brings to businesses, to communities on helping them to communicate, to interact. I mean, it's both the personal and professional levels. It's just invaluable information. So without further ado, I want to welcome onto the stage, Brian. How are you doing, Mr. Brian Settle Skills?
I'm doing excellent today. Thank you.
Yeah, glad to have you on Be Growth Driven today. So, I always kind of start with the individuals when they first come on the show is just tell us a little bit about who you are.
So my name is Brian Galke. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm a bit of an introvert extrovert in that I love being around people. And at the same time, I was always terrified of being around people. So one of the things that led to what we're going to talk about today was something that changed my life back in 2011. Prior to that, like any good introvert, I picked up a lot of books. This is just a small collection back behind me, trying to figure out how to better interact with people because all introverts are kind of stuck in their head, right? And this one thing changed my life. It's what took me all the way from a help desk to being a regional vice president with in the sales division, which, as you can imagine, as an introvert, that's quite a jump. And just led to both professional and personal success. So I am an avid lover of travel, and anytime I can get to see anyone while I'm traveling, for example, when I took over your office the one day, that is like the highlights for me.
I love it. I get a FaceTime. So, for those that are watching here, I get a FaceTime from one of my assistants, and there I have Brian taking over my office. So, what better way to be surprised? I thought I was getting called about something else.
Yeah.
So
it was fun. It was great. It's a power clubhouse too, right?
Exactly. So now you travel a lot, and you go around talking to businesses and individuals. You run workshops and programs to help businesses and professionals, personal and professional people communicate better. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So in 2011, I was invited to a conference by someone. Actually, I was stood up for a date, and I was pretty upset about it because this person was in town. I cleared my schedule, and I'm at the restaurant. She's like, hey, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, okay. She said, no, you got to come meet this keynote speaker. And I said, no, I'm already at the restaurant. I'm just going to eat. It was nice seeing you. And she said, no, trust me, you need to go see this person. I went over there. And I met Matt Fulfer, and he taught me. I walked in, he immediately read my face and said, this, and this about me, and it was all true. And I was immediately stunned. And it was at that point that I immediately got certified. I'm one of less than 100 people in the U.S. that have been certified on how to understand people by analyzing their face. And I'm less than a handful that learn how to teach it. And so that's what I do is I go around and teach people how to better enhance the rapport and relationship building skills with other people based on learn to understand the other person based on their facial features.
Interesting. And you actually did that one time, in Miami. We sat around this table. It was fantastic because just of the insights it would give you in talking to people. And I've reached out to you actually since then and said, hey, can you read this person for me a little bit? Give me some insight. How should I interact with this person? And just hands down, it's created friendships. I mean, it sounds a little weird maybe at first. You're like, hey, I'm having this person like facially analyzed or looked at. Or I'm looking at I'm stalking them on social. I mean, you do it anyway. Let's be real. You do it anyway. You stalk people on social anyway. So
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. So I mean, along this journey a little bit, what are some of the challenges that you faced, and how this was one way you overcame those? I would imagine, though.
Sure. So one of the initial challenges with it was really excitement of it. And you don't read a body language book and walk into the room and go, I just read a body language book, and then just stare at people, right?
Right.
And so it was hard first to learn to control it, right? Because I was so excited. I wanted to do it everywhere I went. And what I realized is it's the reason I entitled the company Subtle Skills is because it's better when people don't know what you're doing, and unless you're ready to teach them, right? So all that you're doing is it's no different than the old school days of how to win friends and influence people, right? Well, you used to go into people's office and you'd search their office for commonalities, and then you start talking about, oh, okay, I see a sports jersey. What do I know about that team? Or if I see a picture of somebody's family or something, it was very similar. But I was always looking at their face. And the other part was the way you say things is vastly important. And so I'll give the analogy as when I was still first learning it, I would go out socially, not professionally, and I would talk to somebody. I saw this one lady crinkle her eyes, and if somebody has lots of lines in between their eyebrows, that means that they're somewhat of a perfectionist. And then I walked up and I said, hey, is it really hard being almost OCD? And that was very offensive to her. So I've learned there is a right way and a wrong way to say anything now when you're talking to somebody, especially if you're approaching them quasi cold. You don't have to start off with, well, your face says this. You know, I explain a little bit more of now of, hey, look, I'm certified in this. This is what I do for a living. If you're game, I'd like to ask you about something I see on your face. So learning how to talk about it was the biggest challenge that I had initially.
Right. So it taught you how to interact, but you still got to figure out the communication part. But when you know that information, it just changes how you communicate in general. So
absolutely.
Would you say that learning how to communicate was like one of the most valuable lessons you've learned along this journey? Just that change?
I'll give you the most important thing I learned is giving people your undivided time and attention is what really made the difference. And that is the ultimate power behind analyzing somebody's face is in this modern age where we pay more attention to this and our smartwatches and everything else.
Right.
When you actually give people your time and attention, sometimes it's the first time they feel seen or heard in a long time. And when you're doing that and you're actually focusing on the other person, then you're in the present moment. So you're not in your head, you're in more of an active listening mode. And people can tell when you're paying attention to them versus to everything else except for them. That was the biggest game changer for me is I realized even while I'm just looking at it, I'm thinking like, what type of eyebrows do I have? What type? Naturally, the next progression is eye contact. And then all of a sudden you kind of just feel really seen and heard. And that was the biggest change.
Wonderful. Well, and it is, you know, I think a lot of times we think about, like you said, we get so many distractions. We think about, well, what's, you know, I need to keep moving. We all feel the shortage of time.
Yes.
A little bit, right? We all feel like we're running out of time constantly. So I think maybe that drives some people to sacrifice. They think they're doing the right thing, but they're sacrificing that valuable moment when they should be dwelling in that moment fully.
Absolutely. And that's, so I don't think I covered this with you before, but I used to be part of a presentation group that any account that we had over $1 million, me and 2 other people would be flown across the US to give presentations. Well, I could do everything in my hotel room the night before, right? Double check my PowerPoints. Is my projector working? Test the software. But people were always the unknown until I learned this skill. And then what I could do is I would go and look at them on LinkedIn, or I'd find them on Instagram or somewhere else. And I think, okay, is this person more auditory than visual? Or what was something about them? And then I felt comfortable that when I walked the room, I already knew something about the people. And what that did is that lowered my anxiety because I felt like I walked into a known situation, almost like to a friendship or a relationship versus walking in out of the cold. And so that's one of the training programs I have is called Getting Out of the Cold, because that's the worst part about cold calling is if you feel like you know anything about somebody, it just changes how you interact with them versus feeling like a virtual stranger.
Right. What keeps you motivated along this journey?
It's a never-ending skill. Everybody has a face. It's one of the few things that I can do it everywhere I go. So for example, in airports right now, right, you have to wear a mask. Well, I can still see eyebrows. I can still see nose ridge. I can usually see ears. Depends on if they have longer hair and their ears are covered. So it's something I can practice nonstop. But here's what I'd love to do. And that is, I love to do it to people that nobody else pays any attention to. And so, for example, if I go somewhere and it's a server, a bartender, somebody checking me at the airport or the hotel, taking a few extra seconds and thinking, how would they best want to hear something, makes them feel seen and heard when everybody else ignores those people. And it has a ripple effect, because if you make a server feel better, if you make at the airport, people at the airports get yelled at for a living, right? Like they somehow can control flight delays and baggage being overweight and everything. So if you take that extra time and you make them feel like a person,
my bags.
Yeah.
Right. But go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just said everybody you interact with that everybody else kind of mistreats, you see that difference in their personality when you leave. And that's what keeps me going on a regular basis. And the other part is, once people understand what I do. So the reason, again, I call it subtle skills is I don't walk in and tell everybody what I know. But if somebody knows what I do, then they come to me like you did and say, hey, here's some people I'm interacting with. What can you tell me about them? Well, that actually went into a whole other pillar where now I'm doing one to help people on the dating scene, right? So it's called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Faces. And what's it about is, well, people are looking at a picture of somebody and then they go on a date, and all my friends are going on so many bad dates. They're like, you got to help me. What can I do, before I got on a date? What should I be looking for? What should I not be looking for? And so everybody I teach it to has learned something about it or comes back and asks a question about it. That's what really keeps me motivated.
Make a real quick change here real quick, my friend.
Sure.
I'm getting okay.
Gives me a second to get a sip of water.
We're having evidently some audio complications. Give me 1 second here real quick. We're going to fix this, and I want to continue. I apologize, Brian.
No, you're totally fine.
Unplug that one, yeah. Yeah.
That's how you know it's real, right?
That's right. This is 100% real. So plug it in. Yeah, broadcast.
Well, if you want, while you're doing that, you want me to just share a screen for a second?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I appreciate everyone bearing with us here. We'll get this going here 1 second. Oh, wrong side. That'll make a difference. It's one of those things. 60% of the time, it works every time, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Might be in the background and say, hey, the sound's just not right. So hopefully,
sure.
Got that fixed now.
All right.
All right. So yeah, go ahead and let me know if you're able to share your screen and everything that works real quick.
Can you see the second screen there?
Let's see
here. Let me try again. Share screen. Sharing is easy with two monitors. Yep. For some reason, it does want us to share that one. So let me cheat and just bring it over here. Let's pick this one. It won't let me share for a minute. I'll fix it in the background. Okay. So what everybody can do, though, in the meantime, is if people go to just subtleskills.com 10x, and I'll put it in the chat here, then people can actually see an example of what I did just looking at you. So I will say for everybody, it has to be a lowercase 10x. That's just a downside of GoDaddy.
Yeah, I'll pull it. Subtle skills.
Oops. So I put it in the private chat if you want to copy it over.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And this thing's a good example of where I just went and let's say I'd never met you before, but I went and first looked at your LinkedIn profile, and because your picture's actually turned to the side, I can't see a whole lot of your face. So then I turned around and went and found a picture of you on Instagram and actually took one of your videos and kind of did a dissection of it.
Okay.
And so if people just go there, they'll see where I actually went down and grabbed a video of you from your Instagram. So I first have your LinkedIn profile picture. Then after that, went and found a video on Instagram of you talking, just kind of paused it, and then talked about the individual features of it as well.
Okay. So let's see if I can get a window. All right. So there we go.
All right. Let's see.
All right.
Yeah, so if you start off there, then what you basically see is what the company does, what its challenges are today. We're doing a lot of things like we are today over Zoom, which you can't use a lot of body language in Zoom because people stay so zoomed in, right? But then if you keep scrolling down a little bit, what I did is I went and found pictures of you. And so, yeah, keep going. So there you go. So I started off with your LinkedIn profile there. And as you can see, that's just a side view of your face, right? So then I actually went into your Instagram this morning. And then I went and actually found pictures of you and highlighted the different features and gave people an idea of what the different features mean. So for anybody who can see it there, when we'll start with, I like to read people top to bottom, left to right, but you start with chameleon eyebrows. And so when people look at you, they can't see your full eyebrow. And so what that does is people automatically think, well, Joe's like me then. And it also brings them closer to you to try and figure out what type of eyebrows do you have. Now, on top of that, you have this brow ridge right here, which is in blue. And when you see somebody who has a brow ridge, you know they're very process driven. So step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. If I go from step 1 to step 4, you're going to come back and go, whoa, 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 what happened to 2 and 3? And the reason that that's important is, let's say in a sales environment, well, then I know I need to explain the entire process to you. Now, here's the trick about it. You first have, in addition to chameleon eyebrows, you have straight eyebrows, which is kind of get straight to the point, don't waste my time. But then when we get further into the business relationship and we start talking about products, then I know you want to know all the steps in the process, right? And that's where the brow ridge comes in. Then you don't have a lot of upper eyelid, which is the next feature. So people who don't have a lot of upper eyelid, then they're perfectly fine doing things alone, right? So, and that doesn't surprise me, because if anybody follows you, you've been in Miami by yourself, right? And then you kind of come back and you do things with your family and everybody else. And so when the less eyelid you see, the more they think in terms of eye, right? So the more eye you can see, the more they think in terms of eye. And people who have little lid are perfectly fine if people want to join them, but it's not a requirement, right? It's just a bonus. Now, people who have a fuller eyelid, then they, in the inverse of that, they're always thinking, what are we doing? So if I'm dealing with somebody who has a lot of eyelid, and I start then saying, well, where are we going with this? What do we need to do next? What can I help you with? Where are we going? Because that's the language that they speak, and that's the way that they think. And so when you learn these things about somebody, you're just learning, like the book, The 5 Love Languages by Chapman, how do I best interact with this person, right? And then the next part, independent ears. So ears are kind of like air drag. So if your ears stand out a little bit, then that's somebody who kind of likes to fight the wind, right? They're going to listen to how everybody else does it, but then they're going to turn around and do it their own way at the exact same time, right? So teach me how it's done, and then I'm going to figure out my own process on top of it. Right. And for anybody who's watching, see Joel's smiling while I'm talking. That's how you know you're on the right path, because people either blush or they smile, right? Like, how do they know this about me? And here's the interesting part. So having a flatter upper lip means that you don't like talking about yourself at first, right? So I would stick to talking about, oh, tell me about other things. Tell me about work. Tell me about your business. And when you start talking to me about personal things, then I know we've created that bond, because you then feel comfortable. But you're never going to start off talking about yourself. So if I came at you right away with a lot of questions about you, you'd be like, whoa, that's a little invasive. So what you do is you start talking about everything else first. And then when they start talking about themselves, we're in rapport, right? So sometimes it's not just what do I want to say, but what do I need to pay attention to as feedback at the exact same time. And then the last part is you have the talk lines here. So I know, no surprise, you have a podcast and everything else, right? Once we get you talking, you just love good conversations, right? You like to talk to people and get to know people. And so it is ironic, because you and I are sitting here because we did meet in the Centurion Lounge at like 11 o'clock at night after leaving GrowthCon. Yeah. And so when you asked earlier, like what keeps it going, is because once I read somebody's face and they understand what we're doing, that rapport is built, that there is literally a relationship that's there. And I'll tell you, like, here's a total fun thing that has nothing to do with business whatsoever. I'll teach it to servers because most people don't pay attention to a server, right? So people get their menu and then they just kind of like, okay, here, and they may make eye contact for a second. But I teach the servers how to focus on the people and how to try and speak their language. And what does it do? It increases their tips. And then when I come back, guess who gets free food and drinks and everything else, right? So you get like mini celebrity status. And so I'll eat lunch somewhere and they'll say, hey, we got somebody new. And they'll bring them over and they go, read their face, analyze their face. I'm like, okay. So you get a mini like celebrity status, and it is the total icebreaker. Like we were in Austin this past weekend, lots of lines and everything. And so it's a fun thing to do when I'm talking to people is I start looking at body language first, and then, you know, how their arms crossed, how are they handling things? And then I start talking to them, and it's just, you get constant feedback on what they look like and what they like talking about. Next, you know, people are hanging out with us everywhere we go. So it is, for growing up as such an introvert and always feeling like an outsider in the group, analyzing faces and just trying to figure out how they best want to talk is what really changed my life. And I'll give a totally different example, but I went to a wedding recently at Jekyll Island, and the guy that was our server, his badge said he was from Hungary. And so I said, oh, so you're Hungarian? He said, yeah. I said, okay, cool. He left, and we'd been to Hungary. So we did Prague, Vienna, and Budapest one time on a trip. And I was trying to learn basic phrases. Please, thank you, good morning, good evening, good night. And so I grabbed my phone, I looked at the notes, and I'm like, okay, Kosa knows how you say thank you in Hungarian. And so when he came back to our table, he filled up the water in the wine glasses, and I said, Kosanom. He's like, oh, you said thank you in Hungarian. I said, yes. Guess what? The rest of the night, who was the first table that he took care of the rest of the night, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You built that rapport. It's just, you know, people want to be acknowledged.
100%. And so when we look at body language, when we look at facial features, when we take that extra second to make somebody feel seen and heard, you'll hear me say this a lot. Sometimes it's the first time in a long time that somebody has felt like somebody actually took an interest in them. And just generically, if you travel and you learn basic phrases of every country you go to when we can travel again, it changes your experience, because most people think of us as the annoying Americans that come in. But when you take the time to speak their language, it enhances your trip like you would not believe.
Right. So now everybody's had a chance to figure out how to talk to me now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I'm curious what's going to happen out of this. Now you also got, can we move on to one more?
Oh, yeah.
Real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. These are just a few, like, because I met you through 10X, right? Like, we all know Grant. And so I just grabbed a picture of Grant as well. And like, if you look, he is the epitome of, look how straight his eyebrows are and how close they are to his eyes. So Grant understands things so unbelievably fast that's why he tends to interrupt other people, right? And that's one of the things that you'll realize is straight eyebrows, close to the eyes are people who understand things very, very fast. And so if you'll watch, he like just gets it and gets it and gets it. And that's why I love watching his brain work, because he can break down numbers and concepts so unbelievably fast. It's insane, right? And he hates when people waste his time. He's like, give me the numbers. That's all he really cares about. Then you go down the next part, strong jaw. So very decisive. The stronger the jaw is, the less people tend to waver. So if you think about like having to latch on to something like a pit bull, right? When the wider the jaws are, the more you know that you can't just try and get and change their mind. You're going to have to come back to them with specific reasons why, once they've made up their mind, why they should even consider changing their mind, versus the less of a jaw they have, the more of a kind of a pushover they are, right? So you just have to know who you're dealing with as to how do I need to change things. So this little line I put here, that's the one that surprised me when I saw it on Grant. So this little line right here is called a verbal affirmation line, which means that's somebody that, while they love titles and money and everything else, like sincere verbal compliments go a long way with those people as well. I was in a relationship with somebody that the ultimate demise of the relationship was I did not give her verbal compliments enough, even though that little line was staring at me every single day. And so that was a failure on my part, because literally her face told me every time I saw it that little line said, give me a sincere compliment. And I didn't do the best job at it. So it's funny what our faces tell us about not just other people, but guess what most people do after I teach them stuff is they go and find a mirror and they cover up their own face and start realizing, what does my face say about me? And that's what part of this is you know, in sales, we all have our product, but we don't realize what are our needs and what do we expect and what do we project. And that's when you have to convert it. So the reason I call it the FACE analysis, and the acronym is FACE, is find a feature, assess the meaning, convert the meaning, and express the meaning. So it's looking at every single feature, because every feature is what you can look at. But a lot of times we just look at what's called like 9s and 10s on somebody's face. But you're constantly looking, saying, what does their face say about how would they like to be talked to or interacted with?
Phenomenal. Right.
Yeah. So scroll down just a little bit more. We'll show you one. So like this is Amy Lee that I met on Clubhouse, and she gave me permission to use her picture. So if you just go down, that's a picture of her that she sent me. And these are all the different things that just from that one picture I can look at. So eye angles tell you something. We already talked about the strong jaw. Her eyebrows are a little bit different because they get thicker as they go, which is somebody who picks up speed the more that they dig in, versus most people have eyebrows that thin out. So they're thick at the beginning, get very thin. Those are people who are great at starting things, and their follow through is where their challenges are. And so with Amy, I know that she would need more attention as she went along, because that's when she's going to start having more questions, versus other people when it's really thick at the beginning and then it thins out. That's when I need to get to those people fast, because they're going to lose interest if I don't stay on top of them. So with Amy, I would give her more time to dig in, and then I would start reaching out to her more, right? So she's going to start slow, and then she's going to hit the gas, versus most people come in guns blazing and their attention span starts to fade after time.
So does the difference happen like if it starts thick here versus here?
Yes. So think of the thickness as your attention gauge. So if they're thick in the beginning, so like mine are a good example, they're thicker in the beginning and then they thin out. That's because my follow through is not the best. But there's also like, that's just one part of it. So there's also 3 different types of eyebrows. So later in this page, people can go in, they can download the 3 types of eyebrows cheat sheet. Where they can just go in, click on it right there, and they'll see the 3 different types. So there's straight eyebrows, like you have, get straight to the point. There's angled eyebrows. So like I actually have, this is kind of important. When you're talking to somebody, there's 2 sides to our face. There is our personal side, and then there's our professional side. And the easy way to think about it is if people say, if I ask somebody, hey, are you married? It's a personal question. And it would be on the left hand in the US, where they would basically look at the left side and think that's personal. And then this is professional. So there you go. Rounded eyebrows. Think about people around them, right? The next one is, what's my angle? So I have an angled eyebrow, and I actually didn't get it until I became a corporate trainer, because I had to learn all the material and then regurgitate it. And so I had to understand it first and then understand how I could help other people.
So now does the eyebrow have the chance to change? Does it change?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So if you go back and look at eyebrows of me as a kid, they were more rounded. And then over time, when I got into IT work, they kind of straightened out. And now I have the angled one. So if I have a picture actually in my training of me at 16 and then me at 36, this angled eyebrow wasn't there initially. But yes, so what happens is there's 42 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement, and movement creates muscle. And people ask all the time, well, is it genetics or epigenetics? And I'm like, well, it's a combination, right? So what it is genetics is what we're born with. Epigenetics is what happens to us after we're born. And so the example I'd love to give people is when you see somebody who goes to the gym and they only do upper body, right? Like they got huge biceps and this big chest and these little teeny tiny legs. Well, that's not genetics. That's epigenetics. Because if they worked out their legs, they might have big legs too. But most people don't, right? And that's why there's the whole joke about don't skip leg day. But yeah.
I love it. So now this is a free guide. You know, we have right here straight to the point. So people with straight eyebrows get to that point quickly. So if you're trying to close a deal with somebody and you realize you've gone long-winded, you're going to have to reset somehow and bring it right back to the point.
Absolutely. So if the straight eyebrows, somebody like yourself, I get to the point as fast as possible and let them ask questions because they understand concepts. And the longer I talk, the farther they doze away.
Awesome.
Because yeah.
So there's a free guide. Everyone just, I guess, this brings me kind of to like one of my next questions I was going to ask you. I'm going to remove this from our screen here real quick. That's phenomenal, by the way. I'm curious how many people are going to go back and read mine now. I'm sure there's going to be a few and try to play that with me. But it'll be fun, right?
Yeah.
So my question, one of the questions I had for you is, if people were to learn, let's say, for instance, 3 traits, 3 top things, what would be the 3 main things? I mean, because you've been studying this immensely.
Sure.
Nobody's going to probably, it's going to be really difficult for people to grab, hey, this part, this, that, all those features.
Absolutely.
If there's 3 things they could walk away with, what would you recommend?
So it's kind of a one and is all the same answer. I love eyebrows because eyebrows are the number one thing that we see even from a distance.
Right.
And once you learn somebody's eyebrows, even if if you just think nothing more than what do their eyebrows say, and you're looking at their eyebrows, you are so close to eye contact with somebody that you get credit for it anyway. And that goes back to the people being seen and heard, right? Because you're looking at their eyebrows. And so a lot of people are nervous to make eye contact. But if you're looking at eyebrows, unless they have really high eyebrows, right, you're pretty much making eye contact with people, but you're present in the moment. And all you're thinking is, what kind of eyebrows do they have? That is the biggest game changer, because you're present, you're so close to eye contact that you naturally go to eye contact next without having that scarcity like mindset of, well, I don't want them to think I'm staring at them, right? It just naturally happens. So that's why eyebrows is my cheat sheet, because if I never see anybody ever again, learning eyebrows alone will change everybody's life.
So don't stare longingly into a stranger. They might think you're weird.
Correct.
Yeah.
All you think is you just look at the eyebrows and you think, okay, what shape is it? And you think, what does that mean? And you go back and you look at the eyebrows again. And so that is the number one thing. If you start looking at people's ears, then you change your head, or look at their mouth, it's a little strange, or their chin. But when you look in this area, like I said, you could even you can think eyebrows and eyelids. Those will get you to the next step, which is that comfortable contact, because there's a difference between leering at someone and looking to understand someone. Right. And that's been the biggest changer for me, is when you're looking at someone and then that eye contact naturally comes next, that's when the rapport is built.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. I mean, if somebody, what is the stats that you've seen where somebody has applied these things that you're teaching? Mm-hmm. What are some of the results that you've heard of?
Oh, people come back and say it's like learning to speak another language. So I'm in a mastermind on Tuesdays where we cover this with different salespeople. And for outside salespeople, like door to door,
right,
they've always learned about proximity, where to stand, where not to stand, how to knock on the door, how to step away. But just learning the eyebrows and everything, one guy said it created at least 40% increase in his business. I've had other people say 30% increase. And that's just what you can track in sales. But everybody who learns it, that learns just basics, comes back and says it's 90% in everybody that they read. But the thing is, it's hard to gauge 100% because you don't tell people what you're doing. You just say, do I feel like I've built that rapport? Right? Now, I can tell you when I go, so part of the things we do is I call it getting paid practice. So a lot of companies will hire us to come in and do like Christmas parties at the end of the year, birthday parties, corporate events, where we do nothing but read people's faces. And what I'll see is it's about 95% correct, but somebody will always come up. And what I look for is I look for really flat lips, because if I say to you, hey, keep a stiff upper lip, what does it mean? It means like, don't share any emotions, right?
Yeah.
So when you see flat lips and you see what's called an obstinate chin, that is somebody is just going to say, nope, that's not me. Right away. And so like this weekend when I was in Austin, we were talking to some people, and one lady had a very flat upper lip, and she was also an attorney. So she was naturally going to be, I don't believe this, but actually physiognomy or face reading or facial analysis is taught to attorneys for jury consulting, right? Mm-hmm. And so the thing is, it doesn't tell you somebody's personality. It just tells you, how do they think? How do they intake information, right? Are they auditory? Are they more visual? Do they like talking about themselves? Do you want to get straight to the point? And so when you're doing all those different things, right, it's hard to tell 100% what hits, but I can tell you it's really damn close. So that's what we get paid to do, is go and do this in addition to then turn around teaching. Salespeople obviously is number one, because sales teams always have a budget. But what I love teaching is basically team building and team bonding, because rather than HR where it's, well, I want to hire somebody based on this, I want people to earn their own right on the way into the company. What I love teaching people is how to enhance the relationships once they're there together. So for example, we were talking earlier about eyebrows. Well, if you know somebody's got a flat eyebrow and somebody else has a rounded eyebrow, then I have to figure out how to gauge between us, right? So I have an angled eyebrow, you've got a flat eyebrow. So I know for you, I'm gonna get straight to the point, right? If you were talking to me, you'd have to help me understand it so then I can help other people. And that's what the angle part is.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
So now along this whole journey, I want to move on to a couple of last questions for you. Along
Sure.
this whole journey, what now? Because you've from where you've come to where where you're going. What does success look like to you?
Success looks like to me traveling the world, right? And teaching people this, because as we get more and more into technology, our communication skills are degrading on a regular basis. And so the amount of thank yous and the people that I hear is what makes the difference to me in terms of success. When I met my wife, she asked, like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to travel the world and teach people stuff. And that's what I enjoy doing. So being able to travel and continue to do this is what's successful to me. And hearing back that it's helped people personally and professionally is really what makes it a success, because it's just hearing that you change somebody's life. And here's the thing, if you learn it for business, guess what? Everybody you deal with in your personal life has a face. And that's the same with, I think I told you the other one, the looking for love in all the wrong faces. That's teaching it more on the romantic side. But then you can understand, well, if I learn this about somebody that I'm thinking about going on a date with, well, aren't you kind of dating your clients at the same time? You are. So you just take the romantic aspect out of it. But what I'm teaching people is like, well, okay, so you may think somebody's hot by looking at their picture, but do these facial features and my facial features, can we match up for a long-term relationship?
Right.
As well. Yeah.
What does 10X mean to you? We're both in the 10X community.
Sure.
What does 10X mean to you?
It's funny you say that. The first thing when I hear 10X, I think of community. And because everybody I've met has been such a supportive group, right? There's very few groups in the world that, like, you can go to an event and then you still talk to the people years after that. So I met you, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about it is when you meet people who are all driven and pushing each other, it's a constant, people help push them and hold the other people accountable. And at the same time, they're extremely supportive to help you in any form or fashion. So 10X for me is that you should constantly always be pushing for a little bit more and then finding that support group that's there as well.
Right. Yeah.
So like on Clubhouse, when I see you join, I'll join because you're in a room. And if it's a room that also says 10X on it somewhere, even if you're not in there, I'll join. That's how I got to meet Jesse, right? So, and took over your office is because it said 10X and it was 10X win room. And then I started talking with Jesse, and Jesse said, and I said, oh, I'm in the area. And she's like, well, come on by. I'd never met Jesse, right? I'd met you.
Yeah.
But that's the type of supportive group that 10X is. And that's the whole reason I give the discount here, is because meeting Grant changed my life. After our daughter was born, my wife wanted to go on a girls' trip, and I'd been watching Grant on YouTube here and there. And she said, hey, look, we're new parents. I like my mom to come down, help take care of Viola while, I go on this girls' trip. And I'm like, okay, cool. But if you don't feel comfortable with me staying with our daughter because we were new parents and you trust your mom, I don't want to sit around and watch your mom watch our kid. That felt awkward, right? But that was when GrowthCon in Vegas was. So GrowthCon 2. And so I looked, I'm like, I'm going to book that trip. That trip changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. And to the point, like, I went and logged in the other day, and the amount of classes I have for Grant, I could never log into anything else ever again and still not be done with classes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's unbelievable. It's just, and it keeps going. It keeps adding to it, which I love it. And then you're right. The community is something that's very, I've always seen it that way too. It's very powerful, very inspiring. You're going to find, you find a good crowd. You find a network that actually cares. They obviously are driven for their success, but they care about your success as well. 100%. And that's what's always been very encouraging. I mean, that's why we, for example, on Clubhouse started the 10X Win Room. Yeah. It's we wanted people to share their successes, no matter what shape or form or level they were at. They're still successes, and they need to get out there because there's enough negative energy. Yeah, there we go. Join Jolt 10X Win Room, approximately 1 p.m. Central every day. Yeah. I'm gonna stress approximately. I'm sorry. It's like I'm on a call, I'm on a project. It's a little pushed off, but we need to figure out better ways to communicate, like what you mentioned, as far as this little thing called technology that's just eating up our room. There we go. Approximately, we got to adjust it. We're quick here.
Yeah.
But this technology thing just eats up our time, and we kind of get disconnected. We need to take the time to reconnect once in a while.
So it goes beyond that, Joel. So think about kids, right? So, and I think about this a lot. I actually read a book called Disconnected because it was recommended to me because I have a 4-year-old, and kids have grown up now where everything is perfected, right? So as a kid, I remember trying to call somebody, and I had to call their house. There was no caller ID. You hope they picked up. There was no voicemail, initially. And you had to just make that call and talk to people and reach out. Everybody is in this day and age, it can create the perfect message, right? So I can craft the perfect email. I can craft the perfect text message. I can put so many filters and different retakes of a photo. I mean, come on, I had a Kodak stand my picture a week later, right? So we grew up in a very fluid environment. And there's actually studies now about the anxiety that the younger generation has because they've only grown up with having and crafting the perfect thing. And so face-to-face communication is a huge challenge for people right now because it's easier to text or order anything through an app than it is to deal with a human being.
Right. Yeah. And I was thinking, like we were talking about Clubhouse, right? Clubhouse has taken off in such a way because people are thriving. They're hungry for that communication.
100%.
And, just like reading the features of the face, hearing the voice, and inflection and sincerity and those types of things really tell you a lot about a person.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's unbelievable. So,
well, you're in sales, face-to-face time with a customer is how you build relationships.
Absolutely.
But as younger people don't want to do that, they're like, well, why can't you just answer my email? Why can't they just answer my text? I mean, literally, you can order anything from a date to a dinner from an app now and never have to see a human being besides who's coming to deliver it, right?
Right.
I mean, it's taken... I'm very concerned for people that get too attached to technology, right? And that's the reason I love teaching this because I was that introvert. I was the one who felt like the outsider in the room, in the prison of my own mind, where I didn't feel like I belonged because I couldn't get out of my own head. And that's what really changed for me.
Yeah. So again, communication is just such a critical part of our social needs, our social hunger that each of us have. And frankly, we think about like good health. It's part of our good health.
Absolutely.
We need that solid social interaction. So,
yep.
Brian, just phenomenal. What you're doing, how you're helping businesses, how you're impacting people, both personally and professionally. I've enjoyed thoroughly watching it, interacting with you and getting to know you as a friend. So certainly appreciate you coming on to Be Growth Driven. And
thank you.
We want to invite everyone back, invite everyone. First of all, we're going to make sure that the links are there for Brian. Go get this download. Go grab this download that he set up. And frankly, just sign up. Get on his courses. Get on his material. It's going to help you communicate.
Yeah.
Best way to get a hold of you is at settleskills.com. Is that right?
Settleskills.com or at settleskills on Instagram. So I post videos like you're asking me about the 3 eyebrows. There's little videos I did on Canva that talk about the different eyebrows that are on my Instagram account as well.
All right, awesome. So go hit his Instagram. Make sure you're following him on Instagram. And by all means, join on Clubhouse because you never know what might be getting talked about.
100%.
Right? And then, frankly, there's some interesting rooms. But anyway, regardless, we want to welcome everyone back next week. Next week, we're going to actually bring on Martin Matthews. And so we actually had Martin and his wife on a previous episode. But we're going to bring on Martin Matthews. We're going to have a guy one-on-one talk. Audrey may crash it because she's going to be with me in Miami. We'll be doing it from Miami. We're back again. I can't get enough of Miami, evidently. So, but by all means, Brian, thank you so much for jumping on today. We appreciate you very much. You're welcome anytime on Be Growth Driven. Drop in just to read the guest, and we'll give the audience a chance to understand the guest better there. But thank you.
Oh, and if they do the
go ahead.
Yeah, if they do the subtle skills then /10 lowercase x,
yeah,
then they can get that download.
Awesome. So there you guys go. Subtleskills.com/10x. There it is right on the screen.
There it is.
All right, man. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Joel.
Be great.
Bye, everybody.
Nothing else pays.